For 2 years, I lived as if my parents didn't exist. No calls, no texts, no birthdays, no holidays, not even a simple, "Are you okay?" Just silence. And not the peaceful kind, the kind of silence that sits in the background of your life, like something unfinished, like a sentence that was cut off halfway through. People think cutting off your family is something you do out of anger, something impulsive, something dramatic. It's not. It's something that happens slowly, quietly, over time. The distance builds one small moment at a time. A comment that stings, a look that lingers too long, a feeling that you're not really being heard, not really being understood. Until one day, you realize something has already broken. The last night I saw them wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. There were no slammed doors or emotional speeches, just my mother's voice, calm but sharp, the kind of calm that cuts deeper than yelling. She said things she had probably been holding in for years, words that felt carefully chosen, like she had rehearsed them in her head before finally saying them out loud. And my father? He didn't interrupt. He didn't defend me. He didn't say anything at all. He just stood there, watching. And somehow that silence hurt more than anything she said, because silence can mean many things. But in that moment, it felt like agreement, or worse, indifference. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't really part of that family anymore. Maybe I never was. So I did the only thing I could. I walked out. No goodbye, no dramatic exit, just a quiet decision that turned into 2 years of complete silence. At first, it felt like freedom. No expectations, no pressure, no constant feeling that I wasn't enough. I built a life on my own, a small apartment, a simple routine, a version of myself that didn't need anyone. Or at least, that's what I told myself. But silence has a strange way of echoing, especially at night, when everything slows down and your thoughts get louder. Still, I never reached out, because reaching out meant reopening something I wasn't sure I could survive again. So I stayed silent, and so did they, until one night, everything changed. It was just another ordinary evening. Nothing special, nothing memorable. I was sitting on my couch, half watching something meaningless on TV while scrolling through my phone, barely paying attention to either. The kind of night that blends into every other night. That's when my phone rang. Unknown number. I glanced at it and almost ignored it. Actually, I usually do ignore calls like that. Spam, telemarketers, wrong numbers. It's never anything important. But something about this one felt different. I can't explain it. It wasn't logical. It wasn't obvious. Just a feeling. The kind that quietly pulls your attention, like something is about to shift. So, I picked up. "Hello? Is this my name?" The voice on the other end was calm, professional, measured. The kind of voice that doesn't waste time. "I'm calling from a legal office." I frowned slightly. A lawyer? For me? That didn't make any sense. I almost assumed it was a mistake. Wrong number, maybe. But then he said something that made everything go still. "I represent your parents." For a moment, I didn't react. It was like my brain needed a second to catch up with what I'd just heard. 2 years. No contact, not even a message, and now suddenly, a lawyer? I let out a quiet breath, almost like a laugh, but without any humor. "You represent my parents?" I repeated slowly. Saying it out loud didn't make it feel any more real. If anything, it made it feel more absurd. "They've instructed me to send you an official document," he continued. Official. That word felt cold, distant, like it didn't belong in anything related to family. "What kind of document?" I asked. "I'm afraid I cannot disclose that over the phone." Of course, because why would anything about this be simple? Then he asked the question that caught me off guard. Where should we send it? My address, my space, the life I built without them. For a moment, I hesitated, because giving him that address felt like opening a door I'd spent 2 years keeping closed. But eventually, I gave it. Before ending the call, he added one last line. This is not optional. You will need to read it carefully. The call ended, and I just sat there, in silence. Then slowly, I smiled, because in my head, I had already figured it out. An apology, a confession, maybe even regret. I thought I knew exactly what was coming. I was wrong. The envelope arrived 3 days later. No return address, just my name printed neatly on the front. It looked ordinary, almost too ordinary, for something that came through a lawyer. I picked it up from the mailbox and turned it over in my hands. It wasn't thick, no bulky stack of papers, just a few sheets inside. Light, simple, but somehow it felt heavier than it should have. I didn't open it right away. Instead, I placed it on the table and just stared at it. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't just paper. It was something else. Something final. Something that would change how I saw everything. Minutes passed. Maybe longer. I don't even remember. But eventually, curiosity won. It always does. I opened it. Inside, a formal document, printed, structured, legal language. At the top, a title, one line, and the moment I read it, I froze. Declaration of Disinheritance. I blinked. Then I read it again, slower, carefully, making sure I didn't misunderstand. But I didn't. That's exactly what it said. They were cutting me off, officially, legally, completely. And suddenly, I laughed. Out loud. A real laugh this time. Because after 2 years of silence, this is how they chose to reach me? Not a call, not a message, not even closure. Just a legal document telling me I no longer existed to them. It was almost impressive. Cold. Efficient. Final. I leaned back in my chair, shaking my head. Of course, I muttered to myself. Of course they would do something like this. It fit. It made sense. Or at least, I thought it did. But then, I kept reading, and slowly, that laughter started to fade, because something didn't feel right. Something didn't add up. I went back to the top of the document, read it again, slower this time, more carefully, because something about it didn't feel right. Yes, it clearly said I was being disinherited. The language was precise, formal, legally airtight. But buried halfway through the document, there was a clause, a very specific clause, one that didn't match the tone of everything else. It stated that the disinheritance would only take full effect if I failed to claim a designated asset within 30 days of receiving the notice. I frowned. Wait, what? That didn't make sense. If they truly wanted to cut me off completely, why include a condition? Why give me an opportunity to claim anything at all? I kept reading, now slower, more focused, and that's when I saw it. An address, typed clearly, followed by a short instruction. You are required to appear in person to verify and claim the contents. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the paper. This wasn't just a legal document. It was a message, hidden behind legal language, carefully constructed, almost intentional. At first, I thought maybe it was something simple, a bank account, a storage unit, some leftover asset they didn't want to deal with. But if that was the case, why not just transfer it? Why require me to show up in person? It didn't add up. And that's when the thought hit me. What if this wasn't about disinheritance at all? What if the entire document was just a way to get me there? I looked at the address again. I didn't recognize it. Different part of the city, somewhere I had never been. And suddenly, this didn't feel like rejection anymore. It felt like a setup. I waited 3 days before going. Not because I was busy, but because I wasn't sure if I wanted to know the truth. Curiosity pulls you forward, but fear holds you back, and I was caught somewhere in between. Eventually, curiosity won. It always does. The address led me to the edge of the city, a quiet area, industrial, empty, the kind of place people don't visit unless they have a reason. And then I saw it, a storage facility, rows of metal doors, numbered units, cold, silent, forgettable. I checked the document again. The unit number matched. This has to be a mistake, I muttered, because nothing about this made sense. Why would my parents leave anything for me here, inside the office? A man behind the counter looked up. "You here for Unit 314?" he asked. I froze for a second. "How did you—" "They told me you'd come," he said calmly. "They?" He didn't answer, just handed me a key. That was the moment I realized. This had been planned, every part of it. I walked down the narrow hallway, each step echoing slightly, until I reached the door, Unit 314. I stood there for a moment, holding the key, not moving, because once I opened that door, there was no going back. Finally, I unlocked it, and slowly pulled it open. The first thing I noticed was how organized everything was. Not random, not messy, intentional. Boxes, labeled, stacked carefully, almost like someone had spent a long time preparing this. I stepped inside, closed the door behind me, and just stood there, taking it all in. I opened the first box. Photos, old ones, childhood memories, birthdays, school events, family trips, but something felt off, because some of these I didn't remember. I opened another box, documents, medical records, school reports, letters, and that's when it started to hit me. This wasn't just storage. This was a record of my entire life, but not the version I remembered, a version I was never told. At the very bottom, there was one final box, smaller than the others, almost hidden. Inside, a single envelope, handwritten, my name, in my father's handwriting. My hands felt heavier as I picked it up, because for 2 years, that handwriting didn't exist in my world. I opened it, slowly. The letter inside was short, but every word mattered. He wrote, "We didn't push you away. We pushed you out to protect you." I froze, because nothing about that made sense until I read the rest. And everything changed. There was a reason, a truth, something they had hidden from me my entire life, a legal threat, a past I didn't know existed, a situation that made me a target, and the only way to protect me was to make sure I stayed away. So they created distance, painful, silent, final. Not because they didn't love me, but because they did. And suddenly, everything made sense. The silence, the argument, the lawyer, the document. It wasn't rejection. It was protection. And I laughed, not because it was funny, but because after 2 years, I finally understood the truth behind the silence.